Our speaker today is Sudhir Gautam, a community leader and founder from right here in Southern Oregon. He's a member of the Medford Rotary Club. Sorry, but if you want to change, we'll welcome you with open arms. The Tuesday Club. He's here to talk about a challenge many of us know all too well, the sandwich generation. Some of us have passed that, and we're not just the piece of bread on top. And the juggling the act and the elder care maze. I mean, it is complicated, especially when you get the older. You're like, I'm supposed to do what? I'm supposed to find out about what? Oh my goodness. Sudhir's journey to this work is powerful and deeply rooted in our own community. He has dedicated himself to the front lines of elder care, serving as an Oregon long-term care ombudsman for 3 years, as a hospice volunteer at Celia's house for 3 years, and on the board of Southern Oregon Friends of Hospice. Seeing the immense chaos that families face during a care crisis, Sudhir combined that deep compassionate experience with his background in technology to found the Care Steward. It's a local Ashland-based service that acts as an expert guide to help families turn that panic into a concrete plan. Please join me in giving him a warm Rotary welcome. Sudhir?
Thank you so much for that amazing, kind introduction. Spoiler alert, I wrote it myself. This happened with a friend of mine from Ashland. So my friend John was driving on this dark, deserted road one night, and his car broke down. So John was able to pull over, and he tried to fix his car, but he could not. So he decided to hitchhike. About 5 minutes later, he saw a car coming towards him slowly. So John opens the door, he gets inside. A few moments later, he looks to his left and he screams in a panic because there is no driver in the driver's seat. So John opens the door, he jumps out, and he runs to the nearest gas station, goes inside, grabs a cold drink to calm his nerves. About a couple minutes later, two guys enter the gas station, and one of them points to John and says, "Look, there's that fool who got in our car while we were pushing it." Now, we've all been there, right? Where we were in a car that felt like it was driverless, and it was not a Tesla by any means. Now, it's one thing if it's a small misunderstanding. It's a whole another thing if it's an actual crisis, which is what led me here today. Several months ago, I received a call from a friend of mine at 10:47 p.m. in the night. And I could sense the panic in his voice. My friend is at Asante Medford, and he's on a ventilator, and we need to move him to Portland ASAP. My office for the next several hours turned into a crisis call center. I had 2 computer screens open. I had 18 browser tabs open. I'm sifting through all this information. I have 2 calls on hold with insurance companies. And I had created this new Google document to take all the notes from all the information. And I had named it "How Not to Accidentally Bankrupt a Family." By sheer persistence, come about 2 a.m., we found a path forward. And it was a combination of a local nonprofit flight service. You probably know which one that is. And a hard-won insurance approval, which at the time sounded like a hostage negotiation, but in a foreign language. When the dust settled, one truth emerged. Nobody should have to go through this. No individual or family who is going through a care crisis should have to go through this trauma on top of the trauma that they're already going through. And at the time I thought, well, maybe, this isn't a very common case. This is maybe an edge case, a one-off of sorts. So I started asking around. I asked my friends who work in the healthcare ecosystem. And it turns out it is pretty common. In fact, oftentimes it is the norm rather than the exception. Now, the cause for the crisis might be different, but it happens a lot. So here's a few examples. Somebody falls down at home, and let's say the family is away on vacation. They don't know who to call or what to do. There's a new diagnosis of a loved one in the family. Could be very typically it's dementia, Parkinson's, one of those. And it sends the family into this chaos mode of figuring out all the medical stuff, all the financials, even spiritual stuff, and trying to figure out the next move. And then there is that adult sister of someone who is taking care of her mom, and she calls her sibling living in Florida. And she says, I cannot do this anymore. I have my own kids, I have a job, and here I am taking care of my mom 24/7. I'm trying to do the best, and I cannot do this anymore. I'm burnt out. And lastly, this is happening more and more in our culture, is somebody could be 80, living by themselves at home, and they could just fall down or have some health scare, and things just go downhill from there. So all these different types of crises, different causes. But being, like Claudette mentioned, I've been a volunteer for a while. So being a long-term care ombudsman for 3 years and a hospice volunteer for 3 years, I know from the front lines that when a family or an individual is in a care crisis, the last thing they need is more information. There's plenty of information out there. In fact, oftentimes there's a little too much information. What they need is a clear path forward on what to do next. And working with some amazing people in these organizations as a volunteer, I learned that a good path forward in these crisis care situations has 3 main components. And I call them the 3 Ps. So there's your people, paperwork, and some sort of plan. Let's talk about people. When somebody is in a crisis, the last thing you want to do is be scrolling through your contact list and trying to figure out who to call first. It's not about having a huge team of people. It's about having the right team of people, a few trusted friends or family members who you can call when you're in a crisis. And it is amazing by just having this simple list of people, which I call your care squad. And this could be a few friends, family members, but also your primary care physician, a specialist if you're seeing one. And by just having this list handy, it gives people so much confidence and peace of mind in a crisis. The second P is your paperwork. Now, I have to acknowledge, anytime I mention paperwork, people's eyes sometimes glaze over a little bit. So I'd like to reframe it a little bit. Paperwork is not about planning for the end of life. It's about planning for the quality of life. And the 3 most important pieces of paperwork, there's several, but I believe these are the 3 most important ones, is your advance directive, which tells how to make medical decisions when you cannot on your own. There's your power of attorney, which designates somebody to make decisions on your behalf when you're not able to. And then lastly, what are your wishes? What sort of legacy you want to leave behind? And what decisions you want your family members to make when you're gone? I believe by having this paperwork ready, you are giving a gift of clarity to your loved ones. When your loved ones or your family is in a state of crisis, the last thing you want is for them to be clueless on what needs to be done. The third P is the plan itself, and I call it the what if plan. And once again, it's not about having a 50-page document of all different scenarios laid out and what to do. You all know some of us like to do a lot of project planning, and holidays are coming. We know who those people are. So it's not about having a detailed plan of like thick folder of all different scenarios. It's basically about taking a holistic look at your life. This would include your medical condition, your family support structure, and even your financials and all those things. And then identifying the top scenarios that apply to you that could go wrong. And then all you have to do is when those things go wrong, when you are in a crisis, you know the first move after the crisis. That's all you have to do. So now you might be, sorry about that. So you might be wondering, what does it look like to have somebody have their three P's in order? Their people, their paperwork, and a plan. I would like to tell you about one of our first clients. I will call her Carol. That's not her real name and circumstances. So Carol is 80 years old. She lives in a condo by herself, and she's in fairly good health. She takes daily walks. She does yoga a couple times a week, and she's pretty sharp. One Sunday evening, though, Carol has a bit of a health scare. Carol starts throwing up, and several hours later, she's dehydrated. She calls 911 and ends up in Ashland ER. They keep her there for several hours, and then they send her off to Medford, Sante, where they keep her for 3 nights, and then she comes back home with some paperwork that's known as a discharge plan. The problem, however, is that Karen lives at home by herself in a condo, and she's still feeling a little weak, a little dehydrated, and she gets home and she is not just confused as to what to do, but she is scared. Her brain has gone into this endless loop of questions about what could go wrong. What if I fall down at home now that I'm recovering by myself? Who would I call? And then if I need some support at home, like some kind of home care, would my insurance cover those services? Do I have enough money for that? And then lastly, this is the most heartbreaking part, is Carol starts thinking if she has to sell her condo at this point in time and start looking at assisted living facilities. This is when Carol got connected to us, and we connected her with one of our experts, human experts, and essentially walked her through the 3Ps framework. So we looked at her people. Turns out Carol did not have a primary care physician at that point in time. She was in transition. And I think we all know how hard it is to find one nowadays. So we helped her with that. And then we looked at Carol's insurance, was because she was having anxiety around that. Turns out she did have long-term care insurance, but she had no idea what it cover, what it wouldn't. So we helped her navigate that. And then we connected her with a trust manager at a local bank because she was pretty clueless about her financial situation. And then lastly, we recommended, and when I say we, it's the expert, recommended some local vetted assisted living facilities based on Carol's preferences, so she can start at least checking them out. And then we helped Carol implement all these recommendations in the plan. At the end of about a week, 10 days, this is what Carol had to say. She sent us an email. Suddenly, I had a clear path forward. It was like a weight was lifted. That feeling of feeling light and some sort of weight being lifted and having some clear path forward is exactly why I started the Care Steward. And my goal is to have every individual and family have some action plan and have a trusted partner in their corner when they need them the most. Thank you.